Celia Wren was still wearing her wedding dress when Elias Varro locked the bridge chain across Bitter Wash and told her she could come back as his bride only without the boy. The chain scraped through its iron eye. Toby stood beside Celia with both hands around her skirt, 7 years old, thin from a hard spring, trying not to cry in front of the man who had just called him baggage. "I told you before the vows," Elias said. "A wife can come into my house. A dead sister's child cannot." Celia was 25 years old enough to know when a man was making cruelty sound like order. She had walked from the churchyard because Elias said the wedding wagon waited near the wash. She had not known he meant to make her choose in front of the church women and half the town road. Her cousin Ruth Bell stood near the mesquite with Celia's small valise in her hand. Ruth had pinned the lace at Celia's sleeve that morning. Now she held the valise and would not meet Celia's eyes. "Ruth," Celia said, "tell him Toby is my sister's boy. Tell him I promised." Ruth's mouth moved once. Elias looked at her. Ruth lowered her eyes. The town wanted Celia to be a bride, only if she abandoned the child who had already lost one mother. Celia put her hand on Toby's shoulder. "Then there will be no wedding." Elias smiled as if she had stepped into the answer he wanted. "No wedding, no wagon, no place at my house, and no credit at my store. You may stand on that side of the wash until you remember what a sensible woman owes a good offer." The wash bed behind Celia was dry except for a brown thread of water curling between stones. A stripped willow branch leaned over the bank, bark peeled fresh from one side. Celia felt the heat through the soles of her shoes and the small tremble in Toby's shoulder under her palm. Elias swung the chain twice around the bridge post and set the lock. "You cannot lock a road against a woman." "I can lock my bridge." "I thought it through, Celia." His voice lowered, not softer but more certain. "A man is responsible for what he brings into his house. That boy was not my responsibility." Hooves sounded from the north road before she could answer. A bay team came around the bend, pulling a ranch wagon with empty water barrels lashed in the bed. The driver was a broad-shouldered man in a sweat-dark hat. He drew up when he saw the dress, the child, the chain, and Elias standing with the key in his hand. The women near the church steps grew very still. "Varro," the driver's voice was low, but it carried. "Why is that woman on the wrong side of your chain?" "Business Cade." Amos Cade. The name moved through Celia before she could stop it. The rancher east of Bitter Wash, the man who had not crossed that wash in flood season since his wife died in it 4 years before. Amos looked at Celia, not at her dress first and not at the tear in her sleeve. His eyes went to Toby's hand gripping the skirt, then to Celia's face. "Ma'am, are you asking to leave this place?" "I am asking for the road to be opened." "That road is mine," Elias said. Amos did not raise his voice. "The wash is not." He stepped down from the wagon. Celia saw him glance at the dry bed as if it were an old prayer that no longer worked. Then he held out his hand to Toby. "My wagon is on this side," he said to Celia. "My ranch has water and supper. I make no claim on you. I can carry you as far as the next road tomorrow if that is what you choose." Toby looked up at Celia. Elias laughed once. "You take her in, Cade, and you take the trouble she brings. My store does not haul water for men who steal another man's bride." The word steal made Celia's face burn. Amos turned then. "A woman who says no is not stolen." The sentence landed harder than shouting would have. Ruth's fingers tightened around the valise. Elias' smile slipped. Celia lifted Toby onto the wagon seat before her knees could fail. She climbed after him with the dress dragging dust over the wheel hub. Amos reached to steady her, then stopped before touching her arm. "May I?" No man had asked her anything all morning. She nodded. His hand closed around her elbow just long enough to help her up. He did not hold her after she found balance. That small restraint told her more than a speech. Ruth took one step forward with the valise. "Leave it," Elia snapped. Ruth stopped. Celia looked at the little bag that held Toby's spare shirt, her sister's Bible, and the hair comb her mother had owned. Ruth looked at the dust between them. Amos climbed to the driver's board. "Keep the valise if you want to be remembered for it." Ruth flinched. Elias lifted the key. "Once you cross Cade's yard, do not crawl back to my church begging." Celia took Toby's hand in both of hers. "I will remember who left us at the wash." Amos clicked to the team. The wagon rolled away from the bridge chain, away from the women who had watched, away from the groom who still held the key as if a key could make a bride. For the first mile, Toby did not speak. Celia held him against her side and watched the road climb toward Cade Ranch. Dust lifted behind the wheels. The wedding dress gathered burrs. Her throat ached from not crying, because if she began, she feared Toby would believe the mourning had broken them. Amos kept his eyes on the team. "I have a foreman," he said after a while. "Abel Doss. He is a good man when he has had coffee and a poor judge of strangers before noon. If he speaks sharp, answer sharp." The plain warning surprised her into looking at him. "You are telling me how to quarrel with your foreman." "I am telling you he is not master of my ranch." Toby's grip eased. Then his small voice came from under her arm. "Will he call me baggage too?" Celia's breath caught. She had an answer ready, fierce and useless, but Amos's hands tightened on the reins before she could speak. The leather creaked once. "No," he said, "not twice." Toby did not ask what that meant. He leaned harder into Celia's side, and the silence after it felt different. Celia looked back once. Bitter Wash lay behind them, a pale scar between banks. The stripped willow branch was just visible above the bridge. She had grown up near Wash's before moving to her aunt's place. A stripped branch on a dry morning meant water had come hard in the night somewhere higher, hard enough to skin bark. If rain fell in the far hills, Bitter Wash could rise even under a blue sky. "Does that wash run today?" Amos's shoulders went still. "Not unless rain hits North Ridge." The willow by the bridge was stripped fresh. He did not answer for several breaths. "You know Wash's." "My father kept goats near Arroyo Seco. He taught me to read drift before I could read print." "Then you know to stay away from that bed." His voice had changed. It had gone flat at the edges. Celia heard grief there and did not touch it. At Cade Ranch, the yard opened wide around a low adobe house, 2 barns, a windmill and corrals bright with horses. Men paused at their work when the wagon came in. A gray-mustached foreman stepped out from under the barn's shade, wiping his hands on a rag. "Amos," Abel Doss said, "tell me the bride in your wagon belongs to somebody." "She belongs to herself." Abel looked at Celia's dusty dress, Toby's pale face, and Amos's expression. "That answer means trouble." "Most honest answers do." Abel muttered something and took the team. Celia heard the word Varro in it. Amos helped Toby down first. "There is a pump behind the kitchen. Wash up. Mrs. Pritch left bread yesterday. I can fry beans." "You cook?" Toby asked. "Badly." For the first time since the churchyard, Toby's mouth almost smiled. Celia stepped down before Amos could help her. The dress snagged on a splinter and tore near the hem. She looked at the rip and felt the day press down on her. Amos saw it. "There is a needle in the kitchen drawer." "I did not ask for one." "No," his eyes met hers. "You looked like a woman deciding whether a torn dress was the last insult she could stand." The accuracy of it made her angry because it was kind. "I have stood more than a hem." "I saw." Abel clucked to the team and rolled his eyes. "Amos, the bell mares come through tomorrow. We cannot house Varro's runaway bride and keep his freight yard friendly." Celia stiffened. Amos turned on the foreman. She is not run away, she was left. Abel's face changed, but only a little. That makes him worse, and worse men cost money. Then count the cost after supper. Celia should have felt only gratitude. Instead she felt fear. A man could be kind in the first hour and resent the bill by nightfall. She had seen it in uncles, employers, churchmen, and now a groom. Amos must have read enough of her face, because he stepped back from the kitchen door. "The room off the pantry has a latch on the inside," he said. "No key. The window opens. Toby can sleep on a cot at your feet or in the kitchen as you choose." It was not a promise of forever. It was a map of exits. Celia lifted her chin. "We will sleep where we can hear the door." Then the pantry room. Abel snorted softly. "You are bringing a church quarrel into horse country." Amos looked toward the far blue line of Bitter Wash. It was already here. That evening, Celia changed out of the wedding dress behind the pantry door and put on the plain brown skirt from a flour sack Mrs. Pritch had left folded on a shelf. The skirt was too short. The blouse had a mended cuff. She preferred both to white lace that still smelled of church dust and Elias Varro's judgment. Toby fell asleep over beans and bread, his head on his folded arms. Amos carried the boy to the cot only after Celia nodded permission. He moved carefully, as if carrying sleeping children was a thing he had known once and feared remembering. When he came back, Celia was standing at the table with the wedding dress over her arm. "I can pay for supper by mending," she said, "and I can work with horses if they are not mean for sport." "No horse is mean for sport on this ranch." "Men sometimes are." His mouth tightened. "I know." Outside, a mare screamed in the south corral. Abel cursed. A rail thudded. Amos started for the door, but Celia moved first. Habit took her faster than thought. She was through the kitchen and into the yard before he could tell her to stay back. A red roan mare fought the snubbing rope in the corral, eyes white, front feet striking. Abel held the rope with one hand and a bleeding cheek with the other. Toby had followed as far as the fence. He gripped the railing with both hands. "Get back," Abel barked at Celia. She ignored him. She saw the broken strap, the twisted lead, the way the mare kept trying to face the wash wind instead of the men. "Stop pulling her head down." "What?" "She cannot see. You are making every sound a wolf." The mare lunged. Toby shut both eyes when the hooves struck the dirt. He opened one eye, then the other, as if courage had to be done in pieces. Amos came to the fence but did not climb in. "Celia." She heard the warning and the trust fighting inside her name. "If I am wrong, I will climb out." "If you are wrong, she may climb over you." "Then do not let me be wrong." She stepped into the corral with both hands open and her eyes low. The mare blew hard. Celia did not reach for the rope. She walked in a half circle, speaking in the soft, steady nonsense her father had used with goats and frightened mules. Dust stuck to the borrowed skirt. Her wedding day, which should have ended with a supper blessing, had led her into a horse pen under the eyes of men who expected her to fail. The mare's ears moved. "There," Celia whispered, "there you are." She picked up the loose end of the broken strap, not the rope at the mare's head. She showed it to the animal, then dropped it. The mare lowered her nose 1 inch. Abel's hand slackened. "All the way," Celia said. The foreman let the rope loose enough for the mare to lift her head. The animal stopped fighting. Amos watched Celia, as if the whole yard had narrowed to the space between her hand and the mare's breath. Celia moved close, touched the mare's neck, and felt the tremor run through both of them. The mare did not strike. "She is not mean," Celia said. "She is scared of being held blind." Abel wiped blood from his cheek. "Well, that makes 2 of you." He said it roughly, but the insult had gone out of him. Amos opened the gate when Celia came out. "Where did you learn that?" "From animals that could not afford to be wrong about people." His eyes held hers a moment too long for ordinary gratitude. Celia looked away first, not because the look frightened her, but because it did not. The next morning, Elias made good on his threat. Amos had sent 2 ranch hands to the church pump with the empty barrels. They returned near noon with the barrels still dry. One man had a split lip. Abel rode in beside them, face dark. Varro locked the pump yard, said no cade barrel fills while you harbor his bride. Celia was kneading dough at the kitchen table. Toby was sorting beans beside her. The word bride made the boy's shoulders jump. For half a breath before the news settled, the room had looked like the life she had once hoped Elias might give her. Kitchen, work under her hands, a child close enough to hear breathing. Only the master of the house had been wrong in that dream. Here, the man by the door had not asked her to leave part of herself outside. Amos set down the cinch he had been mending. Did he strike first? His driver did. Varro stood back and smiled. Abel looked at Celia then. She could see the question he did not want to ask. How much would she cost them? I will leave, she said. Toby turned toward her in panic. Amos spoke before the boy could. No. You have horses coming, men to pay, water to haul. I also have a spring north of the ridge. It is farther and slower, but it is mine. Abel swore under his breath. The bell mares come at first light. If we use the north spring all day, we miss the delivery. Amos's jaw worked. Celia saw then that kindness was not simple for him. It had weight. It could pull a ranch out of line and put men at risk. I will not be the reason you lose your contract. Amos looked at her hands, still white with flour. You are not the reason, Elias is. That may be true and still ruin you. Before Amos could answer, wheels rattled at the yard gate. Ruth Bell stepped down from a buggy, Celia's valise on the seat beside her. She wore her church gloves, though dust had already browned the fingers. Celia went very still. Ruth lifted the valise but did not bring it forward. I came to return this. Toby stood behind Celia's chair. Then return it. Ruth swallowed. Elias says he will forgive the morning if Toby stays with Aunt Mabel until you are settled. The kitchen went quiet. Amos did not move, but the air around him changed. Celia walked to the doorway. Forgive. Ruth's eyes filled. Celia, think. You have no money, no work, no church standing now. Elias has a house. If the boy is placed proper, you can still have a life. Toby is my life. He is not yours by law. The words hit Toby like a slap. Celia felt him press against the back of her skirt. Amos stepped forward, but Celia lifted one hand. This answer had to be hers. My sister put his hand in mine before she died. No paper you can quote will know more than that. Ruth's tears spilled. I was trying to help. No, you were trying to make my grief convenient. Ruth looked past Celia to Amos. Mr. Cade, you do not understand. Elias can cut credit to any ranch that shelters her. He has already told the church women she tricked him with the child. Amos's voice stayed level. Did she? Ruth looked down. Answer while Toby can hear you. Ruth's face crumpled. No. Celia reached for the valise. Ruth held it 1 second too long, then let go. That was the easier truth, Celia said. The harder one will be saying it where your silence did damage. Ruth backed away, ashamed but still afraid. If I do, Elias will close my account. Abel, standing by the pump, gave a short, bitter laugh. There it is. Store credit costs 1 bride and 1 boy. Ruth flinched as if he had struck her. Amos said, Mrs. Bell, if you come again with a message from Varro, bring your courage with it. Ruth left in her buggy without answering. For a while after the wheels faded, no one spoke. Amos went to the yard and stood beside the water barrels as if he could fill them by anger alone. Celia stayed in the doorway. You said she was not run away, she said at last. You said she was left. No one has ever thought the difference mattered." Amos looked down at the empty barrel. He did not answer, and because he did not turn it into comfort, the silence answered better than words. That afternoon, a rider came from the Bell Ranch with a folded note for Amos. Celia watched from the kitchen doorway as he opened it in the yard. She could not read the words, but she saw his face change. Abel took the note and cursed. "They pulled the mayor contract. Says they cannot risk Varro refusing the bridge tomorrow. They want the deposit back." Celia stepped onto the porch. "How much?" Amos folded the note. "Enough. Because of me. Because of Elias. You keep saying that as if consequences care who deserves them." He looked at her then, and the clean strength in his face faltered. "If I send you away to save a contract, I become the second man today who priced you." Celia had no answer ready for that. Abel kicked at the dust. "Pretty words will not pay riders." "No, they will not." "Then what will?" Amos looked toward the north pasture, where the mare string moved like red and brown smoke beyond the rail. "Delivering the mares anyway. Bell can refuse them if he wants, but he will refuse them after seeing what he lost." Abel stared at him. "That means crossing Bitter Wash tomorrow." The yard seemed to hold its breath. Celia saw Amos's hand close once, hard, then open. "Yes, Amos. I know." Celia did not know the whole story, but she knew enough. The men knew enough. Even Toby, standing in the kitchen shadow, seemed to know a grave had been touched. That night Celia found Amos at the corral, checking the mare's leg by lantern light. The red roan stood calm under his hand. "Your foreman thinks I should go." Abel thinks Storm should ask his permission before crossing his schedule. "He is not wrong about the money." "No. Why did you stop today?" Amos kept his palm on the mare's neck. "At the wash." "Yes." He was quiet long enough that she almost took the question back. "My wife Mara died there, Cloudburst North Ridge, blue sky over town. She was coming back from church with a wagon of women and children. I was on this side with a rope. I saw the water take the back wheels." His voice roughened but did not break. "I pulled 2 boys out. I did not reach her." Celia looked toward the dark line where Bitter Wash cut the country. The lantern hissed. The mare breathed under Amos's hand. For a moment the ranch yard seemed to wait with them. "My sister's hand was in mine at the hospital," Celia said. "The last night. I held it as if holding tighter could make a bargain with God. It did not. Her fingers went cold anyway, and Toby was asleep in the chair with his mouth open because he was too little to know the world had changed." Amos turned his face toward her. "People tell you what you should have done after a death," she said. "They speak as if grief is a door you left open by mistake." His eyes did not move from hers. "I am sorry," she said. "So am I." "People said I was brave because I went into the water," Amos said after a while. "They did not see me after. I stopped crossing unless the bed had been dry for a week. I told myself it was wisdom." "Was it?" Lantern light caught the lines at his eyes, some of it. "And the rest?" "Fear with a rancher's hat on." The honesty moved her more than any smooth comfort could have. "You crossed today." "Not the bed, only the road." "You still stopped." His gaze dropped to her hands. A woman in a wedding dress was standing where no woman should be left. A boy was trying not to cry. "I would like to tell you I thought it over like a sensible man." "You did not." "No." "Good." He gave the faintest smile. It changed his face. Celia had seen men smile with hunger, pride, pity, and ownership. Amos smiled like a man surprised that warmth had survived him. The mare shifted. Celia stepped closer and laid one hand on the animal's shoulder beside his. Their fingers did not touch, but they were close enough that she felt the heat from his skin. Amos noticed, so did she. He moved his hand away first. Tomorrow, if Belle refuses the mares, I can take you and Toby to Santa Rosa Road. The words were kind, they hurt. Is that what you want? He looked toward the house, where Toby slept behind a door with no key. No. Celia waited. I want you to stay long enough to learn whether this place can be safe without trapping you. Her throat tightened. That is a hard thing to learn in one day. Then take more than one. The next morning, the sky was wrong. No rain fell over Cade Ranch. The sun rose pale, but a bank of dark clouds sat far north, bruised purple under its belly. Celia saw it when she stepped out with Toby's cup. The air smelled sharp like stone struck open. Abel had the mare string ready. Amos stood by his saddle, watching the same clouds. North Ridge, Celia said. He nodded once. Do not take the wash. The Bell Trail crosses before the bend. If we move now, we beat any rise. She walked to the fence. That stripped willow was fresh yesterday. Abel tightened a cinch too hard. The bed was dry at dawn. Dry beds are how washes lie. Amos heard the fear under her anger. We can wait. Abel turned. If we wait, Belle refuses the string and keeps Varro's favor. Men go unpaid. Celia looked at the horses, the men, the boy by the porch, and Amos with the old flood in his face. Every choice seemed to ask someone else to bleed. Let me ride ahead to the ridge notch. I can read the drift before you enter the bend. No. You trusted me with the roan. A corral is not bitter wash. Then trust what my father taught me. He looked at the clouds again. I will ride with you. Abel threw up both hands. And leave the string. You hold here until I signal. If Belle's man sees us waiting, he will ride straight to Varro. Amos mounted, then led him. Celia changed into the borrowed skirt and mounted a small dun mare. Toby ran to the fence. Aunt Celia. She leaned down. Stay with Mrs. Pritch's bread and Abel's bad temper. Abel grunted, I heard that. Toby did not smile. Do not go where the watcher goes. I am going to see where it wants to go. Amos and Celia rode out together. For a while neither spoke. The land dropped toward bitter wash in shelves of pale stone. Mesquite clung to the banks. The air grew cooler as they neared the bend. At the ridge notch, Celia dismounted and crouched beside a line of sticks caught in rabbit brush above the wash bed. Water touched here last night. Amos looked down into the channel. It is dry now. Because the first rise passed, the next one is coming. Far north thunder rolled. It sounded too soft to matter. That was why it frightened her. Then a bell clanged from the crossing below. Amos turned sharply. Down by the bridge chain, Elias Varro's freight wagon stood across the low road. Elias was there with his driver and 2 teamsters. Ruth's buggy waited near the church side. Toby's small figure stood beside it. Celia's heart punched hard. Toby. Amos was already in the saddle. How did he get there? They rode down fast, dust ripping behind them. As they neared the crossing, Celia saw Ruth crying near the buggy and Toby standing rigid beside her. Elias held the boy by one shoulder. I found the child running to his aunt, Elias called. Good thing someone responsible was here. I was not running to you, Toby shouted. Mrs. Bell said Aunt Celia needed me. Ruth covered her mouth. Celia reined in so hard the dun mare tossed her head. Ruth. Ruth's face was white. He said if Toby came, he would open the account. He said he only wanted to talk. You brought him to the wash. Ruth looked at the sky and began to sob. Elias tightened his hand on Toby's shoulder. Enough theater. The boy will go with his kin. You, Celia, can still speak sense before you shame yourself further. Amos rode between Elias and Celia. Take your hand off him. This is a family matter. Then why is my bridge chain locked around the crossing? Elias smiled. The chain stretched behind him, looped around the bridge post and fastened through the freight wagon's rear wheel. His wagon blocked the safest bank. His driver held the team hard, and the horses tossed their heads at the smell of coming rain. Your mares do not cross unless she comes with me. Bell's man waits on the other side. Store accounts wait too. You can end this foolishness in one sentence. Abel arrived with the mare string before Amos could answer. The horses bunched on the road, nervous and bright-eyed. The two ranch hands behind him looked from the chain to the clouds. Amos, Abel said, we have water sign. First came the sound. Not thunder. Water. It came from the north bend, low and grinding, like stones being dragged under a floor. The dry thread in the wash darkened. Dust jumped along the bed before the water arrived, as if the ground itself had started to breathe. Then brown water came around the bend, carrying sticks, foam, and the sharp smell of torn earth. Get the wagon off the low road, Celia said. Do not take orders from her, Elias snapped. She is trying to scare you. The sound grew. Amos looked at the bend and went pale. For 1 second, he was not the man who had stopped at the wash for her. He was the husband on a bank with a rope and a death he could not outrun. Celia saw him vanish into that memory. Then Toby cried out. Elias' driver tried to turn the freight team, but the chain through the wheel held the wagon at an angle. One horse slipped off the packed road and into the wash bed. Unlock it, Amos shouted. Elias fumbled for the key and dropped it in the dust. The horse screamed. Panic broke everyone into pieces. Someone grabbed for the mare string. Someone cut a lead rope and missed. A teamster backed away from the wagon instead of toward it. Ruth ran toward Toby, then stopped when Elias swung the boy behind him. Celia saw the stripped willow branch sweep past in the first rush. Her father's voice came back clear as noon. First water lies, second water takes. High bank, she shouted. Not the bridge, up the cut by the mesquite. Abel, loose the mares, they will climb if they can turn. Abel stared. Now. The rope snapped under his knife. Amos came back to himself with a violence that changed his face. He swung down and ran for Toby. Elias grabbed the boy tighter. He stays with me. Celia rode straight at them. The dun mare shouldered close enough that Elias stumbled back. Celia leaned from the saddle and struck his wrist with the quirt end, not hard enough to wound, hard enough to break his grip. Toby tore free. Run to Amos. The boy ran. Amos caught him and shoved him up the bank toward Ruth. Then Amos turned toward the trapped freight team. No, Celia shouted. You cannot pull the wagon against the chain. Elias found the key and lunged for the lock. The second rush came before he reached it. Water hit the freight wagon side-on. The rear wheel jerked against the locked chain. The driver leapt clear. The horses pulled wild. The chain held the wagon in the worst place it could be. Cut the harness, Amos yelled. The team is mine, Elias shouted. Amos looked at him with open disgust. Then he went down the bank. Celia rode the dun along the edge, jumped down near the lead horse, and worked at the nearest trace with fingers that slipped on wet leather. Amos reached the other side. Water climbed to his thighs. A knife flashed beside them. One trace gave. The freed horse lurched toward the high bank. Amos tore the last strap loose and the second horse followed. The freight wagon twisted, still chained, and slammed against the bridge post. Elias watched his wagon break and made a sound like a man seeing money drown. The mare string scattered toward the mesquite cut. Celia scrambled back onto the dun and rode ahead, calling, pushing the lead mare toward the high bank. The animals followed because fear had a path now. At the top of the cut, she turned and saw Toby halfway up the bank with Ruth behind him. Ruth had fallen. Her skirts tangled around her boots. Toby was trying to pull her. Water spread over the low road below them. Celia drove the dun back down 3 lengths, leaned low, and caught Toby under the arms. "Hold the saddle." "Ruth." Amos reached Ruth before Celia could. He took her by both arms and hauled her up the bank. Abel's voice came from somewhere behind him, raw and sharp. A teamster caught Amos's sleeve when the mud slid under his boots. For one terrible moment, all 3 hung at the edge. Then they came over together. The wash roared where dust had been minutes before. On the high bank, no one spoke. Elia stood below the bridge post in water to his knees, clutching the loose end of the chain. His freight wagon was split against the post. His driver had climbed out. His team was free because Amos and Abel had cut the harness he tried to save. Amos climbed to the bank last. Mud streaked his clothes. His hands shook. He looked at the water, then at Celia. "You were right." The words were not loud, but every person heard them. Celia slid from the saddle and went to Toby. He wrapped both arms around her waist and shook. She held him hard, then turned to Elias. "You left me here because I kept him. You brought him back here to force me. Look at this wash and tell these people who put a child in danger." Elias' face twisted. "I was trying to settle what you made difficult." Ruth lifted her head. Mud streaked one cheek. Her voice came out broken but clear. "No, you told me to bring Toby so Celia would have to come. You said no woman would choose a child over a house if the child was scared enough." Elias stared at her. The church women near the buggy stared too. Ruth stood trembling. "I was silent at the wedding road because I wanted his credit and his good opinion. Celia did not trick him. She told him about Toby from the first letter. I knew it. I helped hide it." Celia felt the admission go through her like pain and relief braided together. "You foolish woman," Elias said. One of the teamsters stepped away from Elias' wagon. "I am done hauling behind your chain." The second teamster nodded. "So am I." Abel wiped mud from his jaw and looked at the church women. "Cade Ranch will haul from the North Spring for anyone who sends their own hands and pays fair. No Varro chain. No store threat." Elias laughed, but fear made it thin. "You cannot cut me out. Bell needs my crossing. The church needs my pump." Amos stepped to Celia's side. Water ran from his sleeves. "Your crossing just trapped your own team. Your chain held because you wanted control more than sense. Let Bell decide after he hears that the bride you called a burden saved his mares from your road." "She saved nothing. The horses ran." Abel gave a hard smile. "They ran where she sent them." Elias looked at Amos. "You would throw away store credit, freight, and church standing for her." Amos did not look at Celia when he answered. That mattered. He was not performing for her. He was telling Elias what kind of man he meant to be. "I threw away fear first. The rest is smaller." Elias lifted the chain as if he could still command with it. "This bridge is mine." Celia looked at the broken wagon, the freed horses, the teamsters standing apart from him, Ruth crying in the mud, and Toby alive against her side. "Then keep it. A bridge that locks people into danger is only a trap with boards." The first church woman walked away from Elias and toward Celia, then another. They did not cheer. They did not make a grand speech. They simply moved their bodies to the side of the bank where the truth stood. Elias saw it happen. He saw his driver's eyes drop. He saw Abel gather the mare string without asking him. He saw Ruth hand Celia the valise in front of everyone. This time Ruth did not hold it back. "I will say it at church," Ruth whispered, "in front of them all, and I will close my account." Celia took the valise. "You should have said it when he locked the chain." "I know. Knowing is not payment." Ruth nodded, tears running clean through mud. "Then I will pay what it costs." Elias climbed the bank, soaked to the waist. He reached for Toby's shoulder as he passed, one last claim disguised as correction. Celia moved first. She put herself between Elias and the boy. Amos did not touch Elias. He did not need to. Abel and the two teamsters stepped into the same line. Elias' hand stopped in the air. "He is not your burden to name," Celia said. "He is my family." Toby's small hand found hers. Elias looked at the line of people, the broken wagon, the useless chain in his own hand. For the first time that day, he had no road to offer and no road to block. He walked back toward the wreck because there was nowhere else for him to stand. The flood dropped by late afternoon, leaving mud, broken boards, and a silence that felt earned. Amos did not take Celia home at once. He helped Abel count the mares. All 6 were safe. One had a scraped foreleg. The red roan Celia had calmed the night before stood on the high bank as if she had never doubted the world. Bell's man arrived near sunset. He listened to Abel, then to the teamsters, then to Ruth. He looked at Celia last. "My employer will want those mares, and he will hear why Varro's Crossing is no longer part of our route." Abel let out a breath that sounded like a prayer. He did not want anyone to notice. Amos looked at Celia across the mare string. His face was tired and mud-streaked. The old fear had not vanished from him. She could still see it in the way his eyes returned to the water. But he had crossed the bank where it lived. He had crossed because the living needed him more than the dead needed his fear. That was not rescue alone. That was choice with a cost. They reached Cade Ranch after dark. Toby slept against Celia in the wagon, one hand still clenched around her sleeve. No one spoke much. The men were worn out. The horses needed rubbing down. Supper would be late and plain. At the yard, Amos did not lift Toby down until Celia nodded. He carried the boy inside and set him on the pantry cot. Then he went back out to help Abel with the mares. Celia stood in the kitchen with the valise Ruth had finally returned. She opened it and found her sister's Bible, Toby's shirt, her mother's comb, and a small folded cloth she had not packed. Inside the cloth was the wedding ring Elias had taken back at the wash. Ruth must have slipped it in before handing over the bag. Celia looked at the ring for a long time. Then she walked outside to the pump. Amos was there, washing mud from his hands in the trough. He saw the ring in her palm and went still. "Did he send that?" Ruth returned it. "Do you want me to throw it in the wash?" The offer was so serious, she almost smiled. "No, the wash has carried enough." She set the ring on the flat stone beside the pump. "Tomorrow I will sell it for Toby's boots and whatever I owe you for flour." "You owe me nothing. Do not make me a charity." He accepted the correction with a nod. "Then pay for flour if you must, not for shelter." "Why?" "Because shelter is what should have been given at the wash before I arrived." Celia looked at him in the lantern glow. "You speak as if decency is simple." It was not simple today. No, but it was still due. The kitchen door creaked behind them. Toby stood there half awake, hair wild, eyes heavy. "Aunt Celia, I am here. Is Mr. Cade mad the table got muddy?" Amos looked at his mud-caked sleeves, then at the boy. "The table has survived worse men than us." "Can I have my cup there?" Toby pointed to the long table inside. "Not by the door, by Aunt Celia." Celia felt the question catch in the room. It would have been easy to let the boy decide what adults were too afraid to say. She would not do that to him. She knelt. "Tonight, yes. Tomorrow and after we decide together. Mr. Cade's house is not a place we take without asking, and it is not a place we stay because we are trapped." Amos came to the doorway but did not cross it. "The Santa Rosa Road is open in the morning. I can hitch a team if that is what you choose." Toby looked frightened, but Amos kept his eyes on Celia. "And if I do not choose it tomorrow?" "Then breakfast is at sunup." "And if I choose it later?" His voice softened. Then I hitched the team later. There it was, not a chain, not a claim. A road left open. Celia stood and picked up Toby's cup from the shelf. She carried it to the table and set it beside the chair Amos had once kept empty because grief had made company feel like betrayal. She looked at Amos. "I will stay for breakfast." His breath left him slowly. "Only breakfast." Breakfast is a beginning. Do not rush a woman who was nearly married before noon and nearly drowned before supper. For the first time, Amos laughed. It was quiet, rough, and alive. Toby climbed into the chair and put both hands around the cup as if it were a deed to the world. Celia sat beside him. Amos remained standing until she looked up. "There is room." He took the chair across from her, not at the head of the table. That choice did more than any promise could have. They ate cold bread, beans warmed too fast, and peaches from a jar Mrs. Pritch had hidden behind flour. It was not a wedding supper. It was better because no one had to pretend. After Toby slept again, Celia stepped onto the porch. The night smelled of wet dust. Far off, Bitter Wash still muttered through the dark, but it sounded smaller from here. Amos came out with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her and leaned against the post, leaving space between them. "Belle kept the contract." "I heard." "Ruth spoke to the church women before we left. Abel said she closed her account with Varro in front of them." "That will cost her." "Yes." "And Elias." Amos looked toward the dark road. His driver quit before sundown. The teamsters took the loose horses to Belle's barn instead of his freight yard. Abel says the church women sent 2 boys to draw water from the North Spring with their own buckets. Celia let that settle. No sheriff had arrived. No judge had spoken. No paper had changed hands. Still, something real had moved. People who had obeyed Elias because he held the chain had stepped around him once the chain nearly killed them. He will say I ruined him. He ruined the thing he used to rule them. That sounds fair when you say it. It was uglier to watch. She thought of Elias standing wet beside the broken wagon, still trying to reach for Toby after every lie had been dragged into daylight. She thought of Ruth's shaking hands and the valise finally passing into her own. "I wanted him to suffer more," she admitted. Amos did not pretend shock. "So did I." "And yet you pulled his horses loose." "They were not the ones who locked the chain." That answer stayed with her. It was the first time all day that justice had sounded clean without sounding small. Celia looked into the coffee. "I am glad." Amos did not scold her for it. "I am glad she paid something," he said. They listened to the night. "When Mara died," Amos said, "I left her chair empty for a year. Then I put it in the shed because looking at it made me angry. After that, I ate standing more nights than sitting." Celia turned toward him. "Today when Toby asked for his cup, I thought I would feel trapped by a place being filled too fast." He looked through the window at the table. I did not. The tenderness in that frightened her more than the flood had, because this danger asked her to hope. "Amos, I am not asking tonight." "Asking what?" He met her eyes. "Anything that should wait." Her hand tightened around the cup. "But I would like to come calling on you while you are already under my roof, which makes the manners difficult." She almost smiled. "Very difficult." "Then I will do it plain. Celia Wren, while you decide where your road goes, may I court you with the understanding that your no will be honored, your yes will include Toby, and neither answer will change your breakfast." She looked at this man who had crossed the wash he feared, lost money rather than price her, cut another man's harness to save horses, and waited at his own door like a guest. Clean love, she thought, might begin with a man strong enough to leave a road open. "You said Toby included," she said. "Yes. The first man who spoke for me today only included me. You put him in the sentence before I had to ask." Amos looked as if he had been handed something fragile and did not know where to set it. "He is part of your road," he said at last. "Then you may ask me again after 3 breakfasts." His smile came slow. 3. "And you may bring coffee each time." "That can be arranged. And if you ever call Toby baggage, I will put salt in it." "I would deserve worse." The porch went quiet but not empty. The next morning before sunup, Celia took Toby's cup from the shelf and set it on the table herself. She placed her own beside it. Then she looked out through the open door. The road east lay pale beyond the yard. No wagon blocked it. No chain crossed it. No man stood with a key deciding what her loyalty was worth. Amos was at the pump, filling a basin for the horses. He saw her watching and did not come in until she nodded. Celia set a 3rd cup across from hers. Not at the head of the table. Across from hers. When Amos stepped inside, she tapped the chair with 2 fingers. "Breakfast," she said, "that is 1." He took off his hat and sat where she had made room, while Toby poured water into his own cup with both hands, proud as any ranch man. Outside, the road stayed open. Inside, no one asked Celia to leave any part of her heart behind before being welcomed.